Tonight, Canada offers help to Turkiye and Syria in the aftermath of the quake. The quake has left thousands of people dead and homeless. And the city of New York is paying migrants bus fare to Canada. Quebec's immigration minister calls the gesture surprising. Will Ontario's Highway 413 help with traffic congestion?
It's really a repeat of past mistakes. We've been all our history have been trying to solve congestion by building more highways and expanding existing ones. That never actually driven congestion away.
We will look at the new highway proposal, its pros and cons, later in the show. Assalamu alaikum and good evening. This is Muslim News Canada on Muslim Network TV. I'm Catherine Bullock. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says Canada is ready to help Turkiye and Syria in relief efforts after what is being described as the worst disaster of the century. A severe earthquake yesterday rocked several parts of Turkiye and neighboring Syria. Locals rushed out of apartment buildings in rain and snow in fear of being hit by falling debris. According to estimates, at least 3,000 buildings have toppled in the 7.8 magnitude earthquake. The devastation has killed as many as 5,000 people. Thousands of people are still entrapped in the debris. Trudeau has called the images emerging from Turkiye and Syria, quote, devastating. Quebec's immigration minister, Christine Frechette, says she is surprised to hear that New York City is providing free bus tickets to migrants heading to claim asylum in Canada. Speaking to reporters yesterday, Frechette said that Ottawa needs to solve the problem of Roxham Road. Roxham Road is an unofficial border between the US and Canada. New York City's mayor told a local media source that his office was helping migrants leave for other destinations by booking them tickets. He said that the office does not push people to leave. However, if migrants want to leave for another city, the administration bears the cost of ticketing, even if that is to Canada. Italy has been suffering from a large-scale ransomware hacking attack, while several servers in other countries are also targeted, according to Italy's National Cybersecurity Agency, known as the ACN. Ransomware is a form of malware that locks up a victim's files, with the hackers demanding payment to provide an encryption key. The ACN has warned Finland, the US, Canada, and France to take appropriate steps to protect their cybersecurity. The news comes after ACN technicians found compromised servers in European countries and in the US and Canada. The hacking software reportedly appears harmless, usually coming from corporate email addresses, encouraging users to open it. Pakistan's exiled former military ruler Pervez Musharraf, who became a key US ally during the war on terror, was laid to rest in a cemetery in the city of Karachi today, with full military honors. Musharraf seized power in 1999 bloodless coup and was acting simultaneously as Pakistan's army chief, chief executive, and president. The general twice suspended the constitution and was accused of rigging a referendum, shoring up his power. Nonetheless, he became Washington's chief regional ally during their invasion of neighboring Afghanistan. In 2019, he was sentenced to death in absentia for treason, which was later nullified by a court. In addition to allowing housing development in Ontario's Greenbelt, the Ford government is planning a new highway, 413, on the west side of the Greater Toronto area. It will be a 59-kilometre 4- to 6-lane highway connecting a highway in the south to one in the north. Those tired of gridlock are in support. Those who don't want to see the loss of farmland and wetlands are opposed. To learn more, we are joined now by Dr. Amar Shalaby, Professor in the Department of Civil and Mineral Engineering, University of Toronto. Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the show.
Wa alaikum assalam. Thank you for having me.
The projected cost, sorry, I'm stuttering there as I get my brain in gear. The projected cost, I've seen figures like 6 to 10 million to build a 59-kilometer highway. And the supporters are saying this is great. It will ease congestion. It will be fuel efficient because people won't be burning fuel when they're stuck in the highway. What's your assessment as a professor who studies transportation? 6 to 10 billion. Is it worth that for saving 30 minutes?
Well, it's unfortunately it's really a repeat of past mistakes. We've been always, all our history have been trying to solve congestion by building more highways and expanding existing ones. That never actually driven congestion away. It in fact increased congestion, and that's a well-known fact and has been shown by a lot of scientific studies that building new highways and expanding new ones, existing ones, they actually induce new demand, travel demand that didn't actually exist before, but was created after building a new highway. So we get more travel, more congestion, more pollution, and of course, effect on wetlands and other environmental impacts that are not very desirable.
Well, there's a lot in what you just said. The thing about congestion, I'd like to just pick up on that. I've seen in the Parliament, Mike Schreiner from the Green Party, he said the same thing. He said, we built the 401 to ease congestion, it didn't work. We built the 407 to ease congestion, it didn't work. So building Highway 413 won't ease congestion. But can you help us understand that? Because from the lay point of view, it seems like it would. There's a whole new space. Why won't that ease congestion?
It's actually a complicated process, but building new highways really encourages further development in outlying areas, and that promotes urban sprawl. So there are new developments surrounding those new highway. Public transit cannot compete with it. So guess what? People will buy new cars and they need to go to Toronto or other destinations in the region. The only viable option to them is taking the highway. So that really generates new demand because of the fact that people who are going to live in those areas surrounding the new highway, the only viable option to them is to drive. And public transit cannot compete in such a context. So it's a vicious cycle. So you build new highways, you encourage new developments, and that new developments will generate new demand, will generate congestion. So guess what? We need to expand the 413 now, or subsequently add more lanes and so on and so forth. And that's been kind of the cycle that we've been living in over the past few decades. Highway 401 started with only a two-way highway as a bypass road. And then look at it right now, how many lanes in each direction.
Right. I mean, it's definitely a horrible thing to try to drive across the city, especially during quote unquote rush hour, which seems to be getting more and more of the day. Governments often claim that they work off scientific data, that they're objective, that they use evidence-based research. So if you are saying that the academic research shows that this is not a good idea, are you able to explain why that doesn't filter up to the decision makers?
There are a lot of unfortunately, really decisions, transportation decisions, especially for big mega projects and capital intensive projects, are not entirely technical. There is technical input, obviously, but there is also a lot of other factors, political factors as well, ties between the political party and urban developers and so on. This really factors into the big equation. So it's not entirely technical. I mean, the technical evidence is there for those who would like to use it seriously, that building new highways doesn't really help with mobility. Some studies have even shown that for the 413 highway, it's only going to save 30 to 60 seconds per driver. So it's really something insignificant for the cost it's going to incur.
Well, when you're stuck in traffic, 30 seconds might seem like a great thing, but I get the point that you're making. I gather that there are at least 7 municipalities along that corridor that are opposed.
Yeah.
How are they not able to influence the decision of the government?
Because this is not really the jurisdiction of municipalities.
Mm,
So the 400 series highways is under the responsibility of the provincial government. So they can voice their opposition, they can voice their concerns, but ultimately it's a decision of the provincial government. Of course, subject to passing the environmental impact assessment,
mm,
which is federally mandated. So it's essentially an assessment, a study that really needs to show that the environmental impacts are minimum and the social and economic impacts are also desirable.
mm.
If they pass that, then it's ultimately the provincial government decision.
And you're saying that building a new highway won't help. So do transportation experts know what would help, like really help on congestion?
Well, there's a near consensus now among urban planners and transportation planners uh, that building and promoting and developing public transit, higher order public transit, it's a little bit slower process. People who promote highway building, they look at it, or it is in fact a quick fix,
Mm,
but it doesn't really last for too long. Before you know it, congestion builds up again.
mhm,
So the longer term, the more sustainable and the more environmentally friendly is to support public transit, uh, put the conditions, put proper conditions such that public transit would work well. And this is not really something we're dreaming up. This has been tried and tested in other contexts in
mm,
Europe and in Asia. It's been working very well. Create the laws such that you create communities that are transit oriented, and that's where transit would work very well if you contain the dispersion of land use and make land use a little bit more densified,
mm.
higher density. Then this is when public transit would work very well, and that's good for everybody, good for the environment, good for the health, and so on and so forth.
By public transit, do you mean building rail lines or just putting more buses on the road?
So public transit really comes in different forms and shapes. It depends on the city. So let's, for example, take a city like Mississauga,
Mm,
where I live. Well, it was in the same context like Caledon, for example, which would now is claimed to benefit from Highway 413. It was sort of a farmland. It was a very low density and so on, and was centered around road building.
mm,
But they came to a point where they realized that's not very sustainable, and they started building public transit. And so, yeah, to your question, public transit can start with just buses,
mm,
which we call surface transit. And then once you build enough demand, like for example in our case on Highway 10 and on Burnham Thorpe, you can actually upgrade bus transit into something higher order,
mm,
like the light rail transit line that they are building now on Highway 10.
mm,
So it's a gradual process. Ultimately, you want to actually have this. You go to many cities in Europe
mm.
and in other parts of the world, even mid-sized cities. They have very nice rail network that's supplemented by a bus network, and they may have a couple of metro lines or subway lines.
Mm.
So,
And you mentioned that it's slower to come to fruition because I'm guessing because it's harder to build or something. But what about the cost? So if there's going to be, let's say, $10 billion on the highway, is it more expensive as well? And that's why people don't want to do it?
well, if we start talking about bus transit, there will definitely be a lot cheaper than that figure.
Mm,
Um, of course, when we go towards subway systems, the cost is pretty high.
mm,
But of course, in places like suburban areas in the Greater Toronto area, where we're not talking about subways here.
mm.
So definitely, this figure can build a lot of transit in smaller communities for sure.
Then you mentioned that there will be a environmental impact study. Is that currently undergoing for Highway 13, or is it something that they've already passed?
I don't believe it's passed. I think it's underway. Um, environmental impact studies, they tend to be a little bit slow. It's a very big assessment exercise that look at different aspects, not only environmental, but also social impacts, health impacts, economic impacts. And at the end of the day, you want to actually demonstrate through the study that the proposed project is a good bang for the buck on all those aspects, environmentally, economically, and socially.
So it could be a while before there are shovels in the ground then.
Yeah, it takes time.
Well, thank you very much for explaining this to us. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for watching. If you like what we do, please share, like, and subscribe. Stay safe and God bless.